All right, guys, Sahel coming to you with another video. I hope everything is well with you guys. Now, I know I said I was going to talk about, why people hate Islam. I'll probably come back with part two soon. I'll probably come back with that part two soon. But what I want to talk about right now is I kind of want to talk about the victory last night against Senegal, or I want to talk about two games actually, because everybody knows that I'm a diehard football guy. One Sheikh who I respect dearly, I respect the crap out of. When I say I respect him, I respect him like to the 10th degree. Forget 10th degree, to the 100th degree. I respect him a lot. One sheikh by the name of O.C. Effa, he said that basketball and football were Dajjalic sports. And I understand where he's coming from because of the things that come with that, the gambling, the hooliganism, the unfortunately sometimes racism that comes with it as well, with certain fans, especially in Italy, especially in Spain, but also in England too. You had that one time where Adebayor, he ran the whole pitch because they were, these Arsenal fans were talking mess about his talking mess about his family, saying his mom was a whore, and saying that, his dad sold bananas on the side of the road or something. So when he scored on them, he ran the whole pitch, He basically just ran the whole thing. So when it comes to game number one, Russia and Nigeria, I was at that game actually, believe it or not. And what I noticed is the cohesion between the two. You had some Nigerians holding Russian flags. You even had some Russians holding Nigerian flags. You had some Russians wearing Nigerian jerseys, you know. When I saw that, I was taken back by this. And no place is perfect, okay? No place, don't get it twisted. No place is perfect. There's going to be situations in every place where you're like, damn, like really, bro. But to see this cohesion, it shows that people who have a certain mentality have a certain origin, I should say, have a certain origin, are more likely to have more cohesion than people who are opposite of that spectrum, basically. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. As much as we would like to, as much as we would like, right? As much as we would like to think, we aren't like, we're not really near like your typical Anglo-American, your typical Anglo-British person, your typical quote unquote Latin French person, your typical Germanic German person, your typical Scandinavian, just all of the above, right? Your typical Italian, whatever the case may be, right? We're not really like them, okay? Now, granted, again, I've said this in many videos, that Russia was indeed an expansionist state. But we have to understand it that under the banner of Islam, the caliphate was expansionist as well, but its expansion was based off of either him or me. And in certain situations in Russia, it was based off of the same concept, either him or me. Now, granted, some of the practices they did I don't agree with at all, especially when it comes to the Circassians. Don't agree with it at all. Like, I'm like, hey, bro, y'all needed to really chill the hell out. But that's beside the point. But, yeah, I saw that. I was surprised by it. I was wearing Nigerian jersey, of course, repping Niger. Now, a couple of players were missing from that game, but no problem. It was fine. Did I want other players there? Yeah, I wanted to see the certain players, but it's fine. Things happen. But with this being said, right? With these things being said, yeah, there was cohesion. Even with my phenotype, with my phenotype, I can pretty much, be Mandinka, be Wolof, be Serer, be Hausa, right? But obviously I'm Fulani, obviously I'm Torogbe, as we call it, or Torodo, as we call it, or Tukulor, as they call it, or Tomokawa, as they call it. But even that did not come into the equation of there. There was no kind of tribalism amongst the Nigerians. It was just the common ground of football, right? Football and being African, right? So, with this being said, right, the game was 1-1. It was a pretty good game, mind you. And that was that, I think, yeah, I should get some footage of being in Moscow, but Moscow is just it's pretty much the centralized place of Russia, Moscow, I like it, yes, but I prefer the less commercialized place. Russia, again, is big territory, but it's, believe it or not as populated as other places. But I want to go on to the second game, which I felt was even more significant than the first game. I want to talk about Senegal actually beating England. They became the first African team to do so. And they gave them a spanking too. It was 3-1. They beat them on every cylinder. This is a symbiotic victory because it will hopefully spearhead something bigger, even if it's in the world of sports, that on an even playing field, or even sometimes on an uneven playing field, it can be done, basically. The impossible can be done, right? On paper, most of the players in England, they play in the Premiership, which is one of the best leagues in the world, probably the most physical league in the world, right? So with that being said, you would think, okay, they're going to have the upper hand in this matter. But the reality was actually quite different in this affair. And it shows you that we need to have this mentality in every single aspect when it comes to these people. We need not to somehow, you know, lower our our grit, our determination when it comes to these people. We just need to basically show up and show out. And what I mean by that is not in a violent way, but the way these guys are, what these guys are doing, man, especially what they're trying to do in Africa, it's almost like you have no choice but to show out in a violent way. Just, godly, they don't know when to quit, basically. So, with that being said, right, with this being said, the victory was given. We won the game. Colossus. It was a good game. I was happy to see that they came out on top. So, with that being said, right, with this being said, one Algerian player said something very remarkable when he was playing in Europe. I think he was playing for Porto. His name was Robert Majer. Yeah, Robert Majer. Robert Majer said that, you have to go with the mentality that you have to work twice as harder. You have to work twice as harder than they do. You can't go with the mentality of working just as hard. You have to go with the mentality of working harder. And that's with everything. When it comes to being in a country, when it comes to being somewhere, it's true. You have to go with the mentality of working twice as hard. Okay. And so you also have to have a mentality that I realized that the Senegalese players had, which is being relaxed, being calm, keeping your nerves. I hate to say it, but they actually hate that. They actually hate, and that's what I noticed when I was in the States, really. They hate that they don't know what you're thinking. No, they hate that they don't know what you're thinking. That's what I meant to say. So, you have to have that. You have to have basically that calm poker face, but you still have that engine in you. Basically, that's going to turn things up. And when I say work harder, I mean, that means read more than them, study more than them, train harder than them, but also train smarter than them, because obviously what Senegal did shows that they weren't just playing, that they had a plan, they had a way about what they were going to do, and they did it. And this is nothing to it just shows you the strength of the Senegal team, basically. So, with these things being said, I do believe that all African teams who are major players, who are World Cup bound, who will most likely qualify for the World Cup, I believe, and I call on all of these African teams to, how should I put it? have this aggression, have this passion, have this zeal against them. Because it just goes to show you that perhaps the debt of colonialism will come back. And I'm going to end on this note. Perhaps the debt, the huge debt, in which unfortunately we're paying through underdevelopment, through exploitation, through puppet leaders, right? Perhaps that debt is now going to be offset by them having to pay. And that it will be paid by them losing like they did in this game. Although, granted, there are some players who are of Caribbean and African origin on England. I mean, personally, they should play, well, Caribbean, I understand why they wouldn't want to play, but if you like Nigerian on England's side, you should be a super eagle, bro. Like, your team has a few things that it needs to get together, but yeah, you should be a super eagle. You know, you should definitely be a super eagle. But basically, what I want to say is, on this closing note, that yeah, perhaps it's time. Perhaps it's time. Maybe it is. I'm not saying it is for sure. But maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah says in the Quran, right? He says this in the Quran. I'm going to translate it. Because although I know the Arabic is, I'll just give the little transliteration in the video on this note. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, basically, that any good that happens comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But any bad that happens comes from the evil of your own hands. And I hate to say it, but although this is just a football game, let this be a catalyst for things that can happen. Okay? Let this be symbolism for things that we are capable of. Because they've done a lot of damage with their own hands, and they're still doing damage with their own hands, okay? They don't learn. They think the same formula is going to work, but you know, it's not. So, I want to say that congratulations to the Lions of Tarenga. Congratulations, they beat them. Congratulations to being the first African team to beat them. It would have been nicer if it was Nigeria, but hey, you know, this is good too. And may Allah allow us to think better of Him, most importantly, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and think better of ourselves, so we can finally break the shackles of these people. And with that being said, this is Sahel signing out. Inshallah.